Hi, my name is Morgan Byrne. I'm the director of our Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning, and today we're going to be talking about the AI conversation tool in Blackboard Ultra. And these videos are designed to be short, so I'm just going to show you where to find this function and how to set it up. Of course, when it comes to talking about artificial intelligence in your courses, I always recommend having a conversation with your students. You might be like me. As an English instructor, I do not use it at all. But even if I'm not using it at all, I encourage my students to, one, do their own research, but also two, instruct them in terms of here's where this content comes from. Here are the ways in which some companies are using it and seeing some benefits. And then here are the both ethical, environmental, cognitive drawbacks, right? So that's for a separate conversation. This is just how you use the tool. So let's go ahead and look at where we can find this in Blackboard. So I'm going to go to any of my little purple lines here in whatever course shell I am in, and I'm going to hit Create. And at the very bottom of my course content section here for the things that I can make, I'm going to go down to participation and engagement and select AI conversation. So you can see in terms of, I don't want to say severity, but if we're looking at the stakes, right? Something like a test or an exercise would be very often where you would submit something like an essay. This is more high stakes, and these are a little bit more low stakes. So we want our AI conversation. And we're going to go ahead and give this a title. For all of these videos, I just call it Definitely Real Assignment because I'm just doing a dummy assignment. But depending on what kind of conversation you're constructing, you can get your title from there. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do is in your AI conversation dialog box, it's going to walk you through 3 different steps. The first of which is what specifically you want the AI to do with your student. How do you want the AI to converse with your student? I'm not talking persona, we'll get there in a moment, but more so the structure of that conversation. Do you want Socratic questioning? So that's going to be more critical thinking, actively engaging in that convo, very focused on the question that you put in. Get there in a moment. Or do you want to focus on a role-playing scenario? When Mount West faculty were first introduced to this tool during our summer symposium in summer 2026, we looked at examples for students interacting with the role-play option, and they were enrolled in courses for things like their name, age, and likeness deals, so conversing with an agent, or in their Uni 100 courses, or maybe they need to kind of de-escalate a little bit in a situation where they're doing group work, somebody's really not doing what they're supposed to do, and instead of attacking them, right, they need to approach it in a better, more conducive way to getting the work done and everybody not tearing their hair out, right? So it really just depends on what you want the conversation to look like. So let's say hypothetically we're going to focus on Socratic questioning. We're going to do some critical thinking. We're going to hit next, which moves us into step 2. So step 2 is going to ask the question, what's the key question or topic for the conversation? Now, just for example's sake, I am going to go ahead and go back to step 1 so that you can see the question you get for role playing, which is where you set the scene and define the learner's constituency. So what is the learner doing in relation to the scene that is actively happening? What is their role in this conversation? And what is the scene? What's the scenario? So we would set that up if we were doing a role play. But again, we're going to focus on the Socratic questioning angle. And you are going to enter your topic of conversation formulated as a question here in our text box. So let's just say that we are going to be talking about, how might the rapid increase in generative artificial intelligence development further impact our environment? Now, I would argue that this is still a little bit broad, but this is just for the case of the assignment, right? All right, so we've got our question for the sake of our example, and then we're brought to a refining section where we talk about the AI, the persona that the student will be conversing with. You can edit the image. It defaults to a little space dog. I'm going to be honest, that makes me sad because it makes me think about Laika and all of the things that happened to her that I do not think should have happened. Same thing goes for the poor little cat that was sent into space, whose name I cannot remember, but that's your default. You can edit the image if you would like to. You can upload a file if you want. content. I suppose you could also use something like Midjourney, ChatGPT, etc., to create an image for you if you wanted to do so. But we're going to go ahead and leave them alone. Just know you can change the name if you want to do so. So if I wanted this to be a conversation with someone named John, I could make that happen. And then the more important part is including the personality and instructions. This is where you explain how the AI is meant to behave. So let's say that if somebody's having a conversation, maybe for like a graphic design class, and they're talking to a potential client, and this client has a general idea of what they want, but they're not super specific. If you work in an art field, you know that that's pretty consistent. You're going to have that in some conversations that you have with clients. Maybe they just need your assistance to figure out what they actually want. You can set the AI to behave that way. So let's say that John is super excited about AI, enthusiastic about its progress. And I don't want my bias to affect the video. I was going to write something like dismissive of environmental effects, but I will not do that. I'm instead going to say understanding, but understanding of the negative environmental impacts from continued AI use. He is also frequently sarcastic and likes to make jokes. Okay, so that's just a general, a vibe. If you're a creative person, you've ever created a character, this is effectively what you're doing. And then we can set the complexity of the responses. So do we want this to be pretty basic? Or if we're teaching at the collegiate level, right, do we want these to be fairly high in their complexity? And this isn't just looking at sentence structure. So low complexity wouldn't mean by default you're only getting simple sentences. But if we are allotting it to a higher level, right, on this complexity scale, there's going to be, in theory, a bit more critical thinking involved. The questions are going to be a bit tougher. We're going to be pulling from some, not difficult, but maybe challenging. Those are kind of synonymous, but a space where the student would really have to think about the subject matter, whereas low complexity might just be, those very basic responses, not prompting additional discussion or thought, and we do not want that. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and hit save. And what we can do is we can preview the chat before the students even get there, right? Because at this point, right now, it's hidden from users. Anything in Blackboard Ultra, when you first create it, is hidden from users. So let's say that I want to preview the chat. I want to see what John's situation is. So, hi, my name is John. My responses are generated by AI and therefore may have bias or not be accurate. Please share your initial thoughts on the topic. So let me go ahead and type my initial thoughts. So we're going to start with something like, I'm hesitant about the growth of artificial intelligence, especially since I live in a state in which some communities do not have access to clean drinking water. These communities are also some of the closest to the proposed data centers. I'm going to hit send. Okay. So then we get a question in return, right? How do you think the placement of AI data centers near vulnerable communities could influence public opinion about AI development? So that's how this is going to continue. And again, I have my thoughts about AI, so I am going to stop it here, but you can engage with it in this preview as much as you would like. And you can also reset it when you're finished. Let's say that maybe it goes in a direction you don't want it to, moves a little sideways. In that case, what we can do is we can preview the chat again, have some additional questions or conversations conversations with John if that is something that we want to do. There are a lot of different ways in which we can set this up, right? And then there is a default reflection question that's built into it. In what ways did the conversation advance your understanding of the topic? Which I think is fantastic. So let's say that I really want this to be worth more than 1 point. I want students to really tell me what they learned out of this conversation with the AI. I can hit edit, and maybe I want this to be worth like 25 points. And maybe I want to add more information to the reflection. I want to put in my own information. Maybe they're writing a longer, more nuanced reflection than just a 1 or 2 sentence response, right? I can put that in here. And then once I'm finished, I can hit save. And at this stage, it's just like an assignment. It's ready to go. I can hit make visible to learners, and then anybody in the course can see it, and they can go ahead and engage with the AI persona and then complete that reflection question. We have our points allotted over here. We have our due date, just like you would see in a regular submission portal. And from there on, it's pretty easy to navigate for those students because, again, the interface itself isn't all that different. So that is the AI conversation tool in Blackboard Ultra. If you have questions, comments, concerns about Blackboard Ultra, by all means, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, have a great day, and I will see you in the next one.